How's it going, friends, and welcome back to Study Scale Models. So in this series we are going to be looking at Tamiya's 1/35 Hanomag half track. Now in this episode we will be looking at mainly, we'll have a quick look at the kit itself, and then we'll jump straight into building the internal parts. We'll also be looking at a few little upgrades within this kit. We'll be looking at using Edard's upgrade kit. So, without further ado, grab a beer and a bicky, and we'll get straight into it. Okay, so let's have a look at the kit. So, here's the top and bottom half of the main half track. As you see, it's quite simple, but still very nicely detailed. You know, everything's, you know, nicely pronounced. There's no sort of soft edging or anything like that. It's, you know, the detail is all there, even on the bottom half, which is pretty much just rivets for the bottom half. But again, you know, everything looks pretty good. You know, nothing to worry about so far. So as you can see there, it's a 1975 kit. You know, so it's quite an old one. It's nothing new. But yeah, you've got about, I think you've about 4 or 5 sprues for this. You know, everything you really need for it is inside of the kit. There's no sort of ejector pins where you don't want them to be. So there was no real filling to be done. There was a little bit that probably needs to be done on the inside of the hull, but for the best part, it's, you know, it's pretty good. Next to no flashing whatsoever on the kit. It's all, you know, nice, sharp and crisp. It's kind of something you really kind of expect from Tamiya. You know, I always like their kits and enjoy their kits. Their vehicle kits are very good as well. Yeah, at times, sometimes they can be, you know, a little bit basic, but, you know, I mean, particularly with this, the half track, it's not exactly, you know, the most technical types of vehicles, and it is quite a very basic vehicle, but, you know, it's all there. You know, it says nice and sharp and good detailing. The wheels as well, the road wheels are also very good. Of course, for, you know, some of them are actually in 2 parts to guide the track teeth through. You do get a set of figures within the kit, as well as some bits of kit as well, but I'm not using the figures. I don't know why, but Tamiya figures are just not that nice. I don't know what it is. Well, the kit ones anyway, the ones that you give you in the kit are, you know, terrible. They're not very nicely detailed. Literally all these, the top half all seem to be of almost the exact same figure. It's just the legs seem to be in a different position, as well as obviously the arms, but as you can see, they all just seem to seem the same for some reason. But yeah, in saying that, if you buy Tamiya's figures separately, you know, sort of purpose kit figures, they seem to be really good. So I can't understand why the ones that are in the kit are just not that good for whatever reason. But I don't intend to be using them anyway within this, you know, this build. There was no intention in the first place anyway. So, of course, you get these nasty rubber tracks. I absolutely detest using. If at any chance I can, I will get track upgrades. I did actually manage to get some for these, though they are plastic ones from Hobby Boss, which we'll see in another episode. Of course, you get a nice selection of decals. I think you get 3 or 4 different, 3 versions. You can go for. As you can see, you get 3 different registrations. You've also got the North Africa badge there if you want to do it in that version. Now, I did get the upgrade kit for this from Edard. Quite a good upgrade kit. There's a lot of stuff in there, you know, for you to change up. I mean, very little of it is actually, you know, really replacing parts. The only sort of replacement parts that were really in there were for the dashboard and the floor and the front MG shield guard that's on the front there, which originally obviously is plastic, but you've got a brass version for it in there. But pretty much everything else is actually pretty much just add-on stuff. So as you'll see here now, I'll change the instrument panel on the front there. So quite simply, just, you know, sand away the original detail on there, and then we replace it with a brass part. And there is actually like a printed bit of paper with the instruments to go in. So I wasn't quite sure on how I was going to do it, but in the end, what I did was stuck it to a bit of acetate using a bit of super glue. Eventually, I get it on there. It was a bit of fiddling. I then cut it out around that instrument panel, and then stuck the instruments picture on the inside, and then I masked off the instrument panel. And of course, that's going to give us you know, a realistic looking instrument panel, because of course you get the glass within the instruments. Also, just makes it very easy to mask it off as well, because it says the print for the dials is paper, and if you try and mask over that, you're just going to wreck them. So there you go. There's pretty much basically the front end all done. You know, you've got a upgrade for the radio, the foot pedals as well, which most of this you're not really going to see, because that part of the cab is quite dark. So under most lights, you're probably not really going to see that. Now, I did do the front flooring, and quite happy with that, because it pretty much replaced for the exact same thing. The back has got like a diamond plate on it. Now, I wasn't sure about actually changing it for the kit one, the upgrade one, but I kind of thought, well, it's kind of rude not to, really. It's got a few extra floor panels in there, so that might sort of, you know, generate kind of like a little bit more interest on the floor. But yeah, I just thought it's rude not to use it. I pay for the upgrade kit, might as well just, you know, just put it in there. So there you go. That's the internal, pretty much, well, the floor anyway, and the seats are all done. As you can see, there's a bit of putty there. I tried to cover up where the sort of skirting on the outside went, but later on, there's some sort of storage bins that go in there that you won't really see that. And once I've done the painting and other stuff, you probably won't see it anyway. But if you was doing it as this version without any upgrade kits, you may want to try and you know, cover those up, because they're very obvious, you know, without the storage bins in. So for the top hull, there's not really much to go in apart from this rail. The only thing they don't supply you with, for some reason, is the rail part itself, just the brackets. So you're going to need to get you know, a piece of wire that will fit in there. I'll use copper wire for this. As you can see, I've marked it on the other side of the hull, hopefully to line them up as close as possible. And it's quite easy to just super glue them in. So you can see here I'm putting the super glue in the sort of the C-clip of the rail, and just dropping my bit of wiring. So next is the storage bins I mentioned earlier. These also double up as the backrest on the bench seats. These are straight bits of etch, so they're quite thin. So what I decided to do is just stab a few, not holes in it, but a few dents in there, just to make it look a little bit beaten up, and with a pair of pliers, preferably the ones that have not got the sort of teeth or ridging inside of them, so just a flat pair of pliers, and just bend some of the edges up a little bit, again sort of to simulate, you know, wear and tear, and you know, these sort of things obviously they're going to get knocked around a bit, particularly as like the back part of a seat, and being a storage bin as well, you know, people are in and out of them all the time and knocking them about. Also, very quickly, quite a good tip for cutting brass parts off is use something hard, like you can see there in the background. I use a wooden block. Don't use anything like a ceramic tile, because you know, if you're not careful, when you cut it off, it'll scatter across the tile. So you know, try and find some, even if it's like a bit of styrene, thick bit of styrene card, just something that hasn't got any flex in it, because your cutting mat, you know, has, and when you cut down to cut them out, you know, there's a good chance that you'll bend it, particularly if it's a part that you don't want bending, and particularly small parts that you also don't want to be bent either. So next is to put the brackets on the back. Now, I'd already done one at this point. This is the for the other side, and I found out the central piece, which has got two of these brackets stuck back to back, didn't seem to fit the profile of the inside of the hull. It turned out what it was is that I'd actually put it in the wrong way. Had to take it and redo it, and I reminded myself when I did this one, you know, it's got to go this way, particularly the fact that you're going to be filming it and you're going to look a bit of a plonker getting it wrong, and particularly for yourself for a second time. Surprise, surprise, I did it again. I don't know why I forgot it. I said several times, don't forget, you know, it needs to go in a certain way. So just check that before, if you're doing this kit and using these upgrades, just check with the end pieces, you know, that the profile's the same on the back there. So yeah, fun times. Fortunately, it was quite easy to take off. I just used a knife to get underneath it and just pull it off. So there they are, all glued in. The front storage bins actually have fixings for rifles to go into. So, you know, if you wanted to, obviously you can put those in as a nice added extra detail. I didn't bother with this one. I just didn't want to prat around painting rifles in the case of this one. So, but yeah, they'll be quite a nice little add in there as well. So once I've got all this done and ready to go for paint, I use Mr. Metal Primer to obviously prime the metal surface. Don't know what it is. It's clear. It stinks quite a bit, but you know, it's a bit like kind of, the way it seems to me is a bit like a glue, clear glue that goes over the top of your metal parts, and it's supposed to be basically he's a primer, which it does work quite well, but when you come to start doing some rubbing, which I will do later because I'm going to use a chipping technique, I go a little bit too hard on rubbing it, and it peeled away. So either I hadn't put enough in or didn't have enough time to let it go off. I don't know, but yeah, but in general, it's good primer. So like I said, I'm going to be using the chipping technique. So I've based it in red primer by Hataka. So all the paints actually be using these pretty much are Hataka paints. But yeah, so I gave everything internal a base coating with this, and then afterwards I'm using AK Interactive's Worn Effect. This is going to act the same as basically the hairspray chipping technique. It's pretty much the same thing. And then primed it. Sorry, no, I didn't prime it. I then went over it with I'm going to try and pronounce this, Dunkelgelb. I think that's the right one. Then basically once that I left that to dry for a couple of hours, just with some tap water and just plonking a load on. Be careful not to put too much on. You only want a little bit at a time, because the water will then start reacting with the chipping solution, the same as it would with the hairspray, and it will start to lift away from the solution and then reveal your paint job from underneath. Now you can use a variety of tools for this. Well, a couple of tools. I say a variety. You can use a couple of tools. You can use a relatively sort of stiff brush, or you can use something like either a cocktail stick or a needle, and you can sort of start with small scratches and chips, and then you can go in with a brush and make those scratches and chips a little bit bigger. It's entirely up to you. I always find it's best, particularly if you're doing this for the first time, is use something like a cocktail stick or a needle and scratch away some of the surface, and then see how that looks, and then come in with a brush. It says you can't really go back on this without completely respraying everything and doing it all over again. So first time use, I'd suggest using something like a cocktail stick and just get a little bit of a feel for it. So once I'd finished with the chipping solution and let it all settle down and dry out, I scraped some lead pencil into a palette, and then with a silicone brush I rubbed it across the top of the floor plating, the raised parts of it, just to give you that sort of extra sort of walked across and worn and gone past paint, and straight down to sort of like the bare metal. Again, like I said earlier on, I did sort of go a little bit too hard on this and ended up putting the paint up from underneath. So I did then later had to try and match the paint, because when it comes through an airbrush it seems to come out of a slightly different colour, so I had to try and rectify that later on. So really the last thing to do was the bench seats. Now what I decided to do here was paint the seats in just a flat black, and then with a sponge I stippled on some more black paint, but with a little bit of white in there, so it was more of a grey really, just to give you that sort of like sort of used leather look. So it says I stippled it on with a sponge first, then afterwards again with the same paint, just added some scratches in with a fine paintbrush. Again, this is more, not so much obviously scratches, this is more for giving you that weathered leather look. So if you look at pictures of old leather seats, you see these cracks and stuff going on in there. Once I'd was done with that and I was happy with it, we then used a black wash. I actually used Tamiya's panel liner for this, and just basically glazed the seats, and this sort of kind of brought it all together. It toned it down a little bit so it wasn't so you know, really in your face as it is here. And I just felt that gave, you know, the right sort of, you know, leathery worn effect. Something I've not actually done before. I did have to do it on the front seats as well later on because I'd forgotten about them. That was a lot more difficult. That's why usually these sort of things I will do them separate from the model. I'm not actually quite sure why I decided to put them in because it did make things a little bit more difficult for me. So there we go, my friends, that's the internal parts done. In the next episode we will be looking at the exterior, doing some of the tools and some of the upgrades for the outside part, and a little bit of weathering. So do hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you have and you're new around here, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You can also put bell notifications on, which obviously will tell you when the next episode is up. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And finally, if you'd like to help support me and the channel, there are links down below. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you again soon.